Welcome, everyone. Here we go.
Welcome.
Welcome. Our next installment of my podcast. Let's talk horses, life, living, interesting conversations with inspiring people. And today's guest is very inspiring. We share a last name. So if you put two and two together, this is my
We're
big
not
brother.
married.
We're not married. This is my big brother, Brendon Watt. Thank you for being here, Brendon.
This is me. You're welcome. Thank you for having me
Thank you
here.
so much. So tell
Do you like my beard?
everyone.
I'm growing a beard.
Yeah, I saw in your social media. It's very cool. You look like one of those movie stars that's like super rich and just lives like the cruisy life.
Hey, I'll have the rich part. Yes, please. That'll work for me. I just had somebody leave me a message telling me that she goes, "Wow, you're really going for the outback Aussie look, aren't you?" And I went, "Yeah, if that's what it is, then you know."
Well, they're all the rage these days. Everyone loves a bearded man. It's like It's very popular. Well, there's lots happening in your life. There's so much happening in your life. So tell us look, we can get
I'm a gypsy.
but tell us where are you in the world right now and what are you doing there?
Right now, I am in Brazil and I just finished a foundation class, which was kind of different for me. I rented a house here on the beach for 2 weeks and we did the class at the house, which was interesting. You know, I do get now when people say, yeah, it's kind of full on when you got people around you all the time. But it was an amazing class. And so I just did that. One of the afternoons of class, I actually took all the people down the beach and I did a surf lesson for 8 people. So that was cool.
That's amazing. That is so cool. So just quickly before we move on from that, like if there's people listening, and also because we can cut this and do a shameless plug, what is a foundation class? What is that?
Foundation class is basically the class you can take after you've done access bars. And so you do an access bars class, you can take this class called the foundation class. And it really is about breaking the foundation that you've built your life on, you know. And I know the first one I did was 15 years ago, and I had so many things that I thought were unchangeable, but there was so many energetics in place that didn't allow things to be changeable. And so in doing this class the first time, I was like, oh, that makes total sense. My point of view creates my reality. It makes total sense to me, you know. And who does this belong to as a tool where 98% of the thoughts, feelings, and emotions I have going on don't belong to me? I'm like, holy shit, this makes total sense to me. And, you know, and then there's parts on, you know, entities in there. There's parts on creating your life. There's parts on money. There's basically you get this manual for a different way of creating your life with the foundation. And it still surprises me every time I facilitate it. I'm still like, shit, like, where am I not using that tool? You know, one of the great, well, there's so many parts in it, but one of the things in that class is something called the 10 keys or 10 commandments of access. And it says in there, it says, if you study these and use them, it will set you free in every area of your life. And it's no bullshit. You know, it starts with the first one is, would an infinite being choose this? If not, why am I? And you go, again, makes total sense. And again, not the easiest tool to use, because if you looked at it, would an infinite being stress out about money? You know, would an infinite being look in the mirror and judge themselves, or, you know, judge the people that they have around them? Would they wake up in the morning unhappy? Would they? And you're like, no, I get it's a no, but how the hell do I change it? Well, that's the beautiful thing about access in that class. It's like, here's the tools to change it.
Yeah. And there's also, like, if you want to dive into stuff before you, like, maybe you don't even know what the bars are or blah, 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 or foundation. There's actually a book as well called The 10 Keys to Total Freedom that Gary and Dane wrote.
Yeah.
Off the back of that book is also, I remember I met a guy once. I used to travel around Australia and do the expos for Access Consciousness. So we'd go to like the Mind, Body, Spirit festivals and run the access bars during the during the expos, and I met a guy once who was working for us. He was a bars facilitator, or maybe he still is, in Perth, Western Australia. And I was having a conversation with him, and he said, "You know what, Sarah, I got that book, The 10 Keys to Total Freedom." And he's like, "I literally put every one of those 10," and it's called the 10 Commandments as like a bit of a joke, because if there's one thing about access consciousness, it's completely irreverent and nothing is serious and everything is an interesting point of view and there to make fun of. But he said, "I got this book and I actually put those 10 commandments, 10 keys into play," and told me some stories about how he used this book. And that he's like, "It's pretty much my Bible. Like, I just have it with me all the time. I use the tools out of it." And, he did bars and the 10 Keys book. And that was like, he had everything, all of the tools available to him to create the life that he desired to create. And the thing I love about Access is you can have that. You can have one bars class in a book. You can have one bars class in a foundation class, or you can do like what we did and kind of take this deep dive and never stop exploring.
We're a little extreme.
Yeah, and creating.
We're a little bit extreme. It must be that last name. I don't know what it is.
Exactly. But what else? Like, so you're in Brazil now, facilitating this access consciousness class. Like, what else are you doing? Like, what else have these tools and what else has access consciousness brought to you creating your life right now?
Well, I moved, as you know, I moved to Houston 5.5 years ago, and then had all of my stuff with addiction and alcoholism kind of hit its extremes. And then, so for the last few years, it's really been building my life again since that. But it was about 6 months ago, I was just like, I need something different again. Cause I'm like, if I sit still too long or if I'm not moving, I just get all like, I need something different, and I've got to make a different choice. And so I was like, I packed up my house in Houston and just started traveling, and doing classes. And I mean, I always traveled anyway. I just had a home to go back to. Yeah. This was different for me. And the first 3 or 4 months, I was like, I don't know if I can do this, but what I realized was every time I wanted to go backwards, every time I wanted to go back to a home, it was exactly that. I wanted to go back to something, and it was uncomfortable. And now it's just like, okay, so each day it's put me a lot more in question, and it's got me a lot more present with looking at, I guess, my life.
Yeah.
Well, more so living. Yeah.
And there's got to be such a level of like vulnerability to choosing something like that, because it's also interesting, you look at us like human beings, or this thing that we've been on this planet, in our current form for, I don't know, 100,000 years or something like that. We've always been very nomadic. It's really only been in the last few generations, maybe quite a few, but not that long ago, that we actually settled and stayed in one place. Like really when agriculture became a thing and we started farming the land and stuff like that. But before that, we didn't really ever have a home. Our home was where we were, where we stopped to gather food and, maybe run into people we knew from somewhere along the way. And it's so interesting how we've created this space now where we so crave this stillness, but it's actually in a lot of ways so opposite to who we truly are.
Well, we've become hoarders, and we like to hoard things, and we don't like to lose things, and we like to try and keep things, and we like to hold on to things. But if you look at, like, man, I've looked back through my life, and when I'm doing that, I'm doing exactly that with everything that I've defined myself as, also hoarding my limitations, hoarding everything that I've decided I couldn't lose. And I remember right when my life crashed a few years ago, right in the beginning of my sobriety, that cusp of will he stay or will he go, basically, was my thing. Will he stay or will he go now? If he stays, there will be trouble. That's what was going on. There wasn't that kind of joy at the time.
No, you weren't singing a song at the time, probably.
I definitely wasn't singing a song at the time. But one of the things for me was, I went from my point of view of being a total loser, just being a nobody, to everybody looking at me as a somebody, and quickly, and it was like, oh my God, Brendon's amazing. And, and I was facilitating big classes, and I was like, okay, how do I create the image to keep up with all of this, coupled with alcoholism, which is not a good mix at all. And then basically the unwillingness to lose any of that. When you create yourself as something, you do everything that you can to hold on to it. And so when it all came crashing down, I was like, because the things that I thought I couldn't lose was this image that I'd created myself as. And it wasn't necessarily a cognitive thing. I wasn't thinking, I can't lose this.
Yeah.
But was that the relationship that I was in at the time, money, and those three things went away within 24 hours. And I was like, oh. So I went, well, that was bullshit. The idea that I couldn't lose it. And it taught me to start looking at things like that. Like, what have I decided I cannot lose that keeps me stuck?
Yeah. And for people out there, like, because, you talked about us being quite extreme with things. I mean, you did the extreme version of actually losing everything. But, you hear this tool in Access a lot about you've got to be willing to lose everything in order to have everything, or in order to gain everything, kind of thing. So can you talk a little bit about that for people out there? Because I think in a lot of ways, and this is where for me, excuse me, horses are so cool. And, like I do this podcast where it's loosely about horses, but for me, horses kind of weave their way into everything, because a horse is pretty much like, a horse is ready to pick up and go in any moment. Like, obviously we've domesticated them, we've taken a lot of that away, but their natural state of being is to be ready to just up and go. Yeah. I think in a lot of ways, the one thing they kind of try to avoid is death, but they're sort of all right with that as well. They're kind of like, well, worst case scenario, I get eaten by a tiger, but I'm going to try my best to not have that happen. And in that case, I'm just going to be ready to pick up and go. And I think a lot of people in the world desire to have that level of freedom, but somehow we've like made this thing of like, I need to have my comforts and I need to hold on to this and my image and my relationship and my blah, blah, blah. So what sort of stuff can people kind of just play with to have this world of like, it's truly freedom, really. Essentially, it's what would give us all freedom, is to have this space of being willing to lose anything and everything in a moment.
Well, I think we've been misled. If you look at the way that you've been educated, you look at the way that the world around you, what it puts out there about, what you should have, what you shouldn't have, what you should do, what you shouldn't do. And it's all based on judgment. None of it's based on awareness of what's actually true for you. So it's like, relationships a big one for me personally, where I keep doing like and it's changed a lot, but it's been one thing over my life where it's like, it's almost like feeling like lost without it. Or this, I'm going to be all alone, and all of these things come up. But again, remember that thing of 98% of your thoughts, feelings, and emotions. What I've had to navigate is how much of what I've decided is me isn't.
Yeah.
How much of what I've decided is true for me isn't actually true for me. And that's the part that it's really uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. It's really uncomfortable to create yourself one way and then look at, wait a minute, is this actually true? And if I was to see this, and this is where a lot of us aren't willing to have that level of self-awareness and to be in that much question with yourself, because we have the idea that, man, if I start questioning and I actually see these things, I'm going to have to change it. Well, it's not you're going to have to change it. You're going to have far more ease if you desire to change it.
Yep.
Because you can't change anything that you keep secret from you, you keep hidden from you, or you're lying to yourself about. You can only change something that you're willing to be aware of. And so I think that part is, it's different for, it's different for each of us, but you kind of get to a point. And if you're one of those people who is, there's always kind of been seeking something different. I mean, I know I have, I know you have, where it's just like, we've tried normal.
That worked
we've
for
tried to
about 5
do
minutes. Worst 5 minutes of my life.
I still try it sometimes. I'm like, this is amazing. I'm miserable. And it's like, what am I doing? But it's like, you get to a point where you can't hide from you forever.
Yeah.
And it's not, so that thing of the willingness to lose is, if you're not willing to lose something, then can you truly have it? And so with the willingness to lose it, where a lot of people misidentify it is, oh, so now I have to lose it. No, it's not about having to lose it. Yep. Just notice the energy to that. There's this, oh, my precious, but it's, if you're willing to lose something, you can allow it to contribute to your life. If you're not willing to lose something, you have to hold it in place. And it doesn't get to, it has to be exactly what you've decided it is, rather than, growing and changing.
Yeah. And I love this because, while you're talking, you and I have very different lives. Like most people we kind of know in Access that have created a life that really works for them, because I have certain things that I do love to come home to. Like, I love I love my home. We're moving soon. I have a great relationship. I have my animals whom I adore. But there's like such a huge amount of freedom in, like, I totally get what you're saying. And I think, just to highlight to people out there, it doesn't mean you've got to create a life that someone else has created and make that right and your life wrong. It's like, it's this space where, like, every day, even if you wake up and do the same job, you live in the same house, you're not like Brendon traveling the world, waking up in a different country every couple of weeks or something like that. It doesn't need to be that version of it. It's about every day being this adventure of your life. And no matter, even if you do a 9-to-5 job and you go to that same job every day, it's like, when you have these tools, it actually gives you such an adventure of discovery in life and living.
Yeah. And when you start learning how to, and I use learning kind of loosely, because it's more, I say that more as, when you kind of been on autopilot a lot throughout your life, becoming really present in it can be a learning thing, so it's, again, like you say, it's not about what you do, it's the space from which you do it and the space from which you choose it. So it becomes where you could be washing the dishes and having pure joy in your world, because it's you there as you choosing it and creating it. And there's a creativity to that. So it's not, for me, I also, like, I look at one of the things I realized recently, because, getting back in the ocean for me is such a huge gift. And I was like, always really, I wanted to have a lot more, time in the water and, space at the beach and all that stuff. And I was like, man, I realized there was a lot of things for me that I just stopped asking for.
Yeah.
I looked at what I was asking for and I went, wow, there's not much at all. Like, it was just not much. So I went, okay, I'm going to start looking at what else and asking for more of that space in my life. And for me, it's not necessarily the things, it's more, I've been the extreme in my life of what I don't like about me, you know. And so I don't like that version much, you know. I like to be I like to be me, to know that I'm being a contribution. And for that, it doesn't really matter where I am in the world. It's just I can be miserable. I can be miserable in paradise if I choose to be.
Yep. Yep. And, you know, that's why you see so many people that you perceive have it all kind of thing, but you step into their world and look at, like, are they truly happy or?
Yeah. Don't, here's a pro tip. Don't believe in social media.
Yeah.
You know, and it is because, you know, I did a video the other day because I'm doing this. I got this call in a couple of days called 4 Tools to Create Your Happy, right? And I was looking at that energy for me, and I did this video saying, I'd love to say I'm happy all the time, but I'm not. But I'm getting to more of me all the time. And sometimes that feels like absolute shit.
Yeah.
But the difference with now, and, you know, what if you hear that and you're like, well, what's the point? Well, give me a moment. You're like that. But the difference now is one of the, when you're willing to commit to you, I guess we could call it, commit to having more of you, what's true for you, whatever that looks like, is even when the shitty stuff shows up, you know, it's there for more awareness.
Yeah.
And what I did it's there for more awareness if you're willing to be present. Because what I did for a long time, and what alcohol was really helpful in the situations where I desired it, was great for escaping.
Yeah.
You know, and now I don't have that. So it's like, okay, so what is this? You know, 4 questions. What is this? What do I do with it? Can I change it? If so, how do I change it? Not how do I avoid it?
Yeah. And so the call you have coming up, because this podcast episode will air after that call happens. So we'll put the link so you can still go and join and get the downloads because it's a free thing. But so you're saying 4 tools to create your happy. Can you divulge like any information about what is a tool and how do you use it to create something like that?
Well, the first one I have for this, the first one for me in creating my happy is choice. You know, and what I mean, and that's a huge topic, you know, but as an awareness to give you some awareness with it, it's one of the toughest things to get is that we are the creator of everything.
Yeah.
And so when anything's showing up, it's not about, oh, this is happening to me. I can't be happy because it's, okay, what choice am I making that's creating this? And see, for me, a lot of my life was about everything. There was so much of the world around me had so much more power than me. You know, I was not the source for the creation of my life. Everything else was. And so if you want to have joy that can't be, well, let me say it like this. If you want happiness to not be conditional, because that's the other thing that we do with a lot, like even gratitude, happiness, any of those things in your life, it's like, yeah, I have them until, or I have them because of. So everything's conditional rather than, you know what, I can have anything show up in my life and I have the tools to deal with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's where access for me is really different, because it's about all of life coming to you with ease and joy and glory, not the good stuff, all of it.
Yeah. And it's like, you know, the everything you're talking about here is really, you know, the journey I've been on with my life. And the same thing, you know, it's not like you wake up one day. It's so interesting. There's so many things out there now giving you the answer of what is required to have this amazing life. But the thing I love about access is it never stops. It's not like, okay, if you just get this, everything's going to be great. It's going to be, it's almost like it's just a toolbox you have available for every day, because every day, like you said, you've got to learn how to choose first and foremost, like what even is choice. And then you've actually got to choose things, which is also like, it takes some fucking effort. It takes some responsibility. Like when you're talking here, like with everything you're saying, it's almost like it becomes this place where you become completely responsible for your life. Like so many of us are like, well, that was my upbringing, or, you know, I can't do that because, or like whatever it is, like whatever that story is we tell ourselves. And then you come to this place where if you do find something like access consciousness, and there's really nothing else like it on the planet, it's also pretty full on, because you're like, fuck, I'm actually responsible here. I'm the one that has to create my life. I'm the one that has to choose happiness. And even happiness, it's such a great example, or joy or gratitude, like whatever you want to call it. It's still something you actually have to choose in that moment. The moment you feel yourself going in the other direction, or, you know, getting compressed, or whatever it is, like however it shows up for you, to be like, oh, hang on a second, I actually have a choice in this moment to choose something different, but I have to choose it. I have to be the one that makes that choice.
And I have to be the one that makes that choice, and I also have to acknowledge that I have choice. You know, because it's like, you know, you go to fight, you go to separation, you go to judgment, you go to anger, you go to any of those things. That's a choice. And there's always a different choice. But if you look at, because it's not about getting choice right, because that's the place where people get stuck. It's not about getting choice right or getting choice wrong. It's about looking at it and going, what did this choice create? And recognizing that you can't know what a choice creates. You can know that it creates. And you can get a sense of, you can begin to navigate your life by, you know, one of the tools in Access is what's true for you will always make you lighter. What's not true will always make you heavier. So if you begin to go, oh, I knew that was heavier, I chose it anyway, it didn't work. Okay, cool. Rather than I chose it anyway, it didn't work. Oh my God, it's terrible. I don't know how to choose. Wow, look at what that created. You know, because the lie is that we don't know what's true for us. You know, and I've had to navigate this with being like, I have no idea what I desire as my life. It's not that I have no idea what I desire as my life. It's just that what I desire is different than what I see others choose. And it's easy to duplicate. You know, it's really easy to duplicate, but to create and choose and to truly create a life that works for you. And that could be anything. Like that could be, you know, that truly could be anything. And what is that for you? Only you know.
So cool. And so let's weave it into horses a little bit now. So recently we spent a bit of time together at El Lugar. I like your hat, PS, in Costa Rica, which is
there you go. Right there.
Amazing
El Lugar,
quote unquote, like eco resort that some amazing people are building there. And we have horses there. I actually have 2 horses there now, which I woke up this morning, like every now and again I have a moment of like, holy shit.
Holy shit, I have 2 horses in Costa Rica. What am I, a rich bitch?
So am I crazy? Because that was a choice too, like talking about this choice topic. But, you know, during those weeks that we were there, we rode many times. We got to ride many horses. Can you talk a little bit about what horses have shown you about choice? Or, yeah, I have a follow-up question, but let me start with that. Is there something there for you that you can talk about with that?
Horses have taught me a lot about what it is to be present. And what I mean by being present, because a lot of people, you know, that word gets thrown around a lot, is you're not using the moment before to determine what this moment has to show up as. You're also not using the moment ahead of you to determine what this moment shows up as. So you're present in the moment. And it's like, and that's a horse, you know. And so they would show me that about any time I would go to, oh shit, what have I got on later? Or how's this, you know, any time I would go to my head, the horse would act up, and I would, it wasn't even the horse would act up. I would lose the connection to it. And I would just be like, what? We went from being together to you're a horse and I'm me, based on, me not being present. So they taught me that.
Yeah.
And many other things.
Yeah. And I think even like, I'll just put it this way, to get good at choice, like to get really good at making choices that are truly your choices that are going to work for you. If you choose from that space, like that is ultimately what choice is. Like, and I've spent many years learning about how to choose, like, what do I ask? Like, how do I even choose? How do I know? How do I choose? But what you've said just then is literally, I think, the space to choose from, where if this moment was all that was in existence, what would I choose?
And that is how you'll teach yourself what choice actually is. I got 10 seconds, 10-second increments of choice. It really is, because it's not about the right choice or the wrong choice. I've made more shitty choices than I'm gonna go out there and say most people I know. I might be leading the race on that one, but kidding, not kidding. But it's like, but every choice done, but when you're willing to, when you don't have to be in judgment of it, then each and every choice can be a contribution to more awareness. It's like, okay, what did that choice create? Well, like, none of us are perfect. I'm far from it. I'm far from it. But it's not about perfection. It's about recognizing, well, that was a silly choice. What did I choose that for?
Yep.
What was I desiring to create with that? And this is where the self-awareness part comes in, because if you have the vulnerability with yourself to, even look at the way that you handle situations in relationships and stuff like that, is, oh man, I didn't, that was a shitty thing to say, or, I'm sorry for that or whatever. But it's not about avoiding choice. It's about the willingness to see that your choice creates.
Yep. And I love what you said before about the awareness that you gain from things. Like, I think ultimately there's no bad or wrong choices, as long as whatever comes of that choice, you actually take that information, that awareness, and use it for the next choice that you make. Like, acknowledging where you chose something and it maybe created, something in someone else's world. But it's also like, it creates this place where we become very responsible. I don't know why that word keeps coming up, but we become very responsible for the choices we're making. But it's not in a way of like making anything wrong or right. It's more this thing of like actually taking the awareness and the information that comes from that choice to almost like build on things and create more from that space.
Well, I tell you, one of the things I had to learn was accountability.
Yeah.
And
that's a better word. Yeah.
Because that was, I remember early on in my sobriety, I got this this sponsor with AA, and this guy was just an asshole of magnitude. But he's one of the reasons that I'm here today. And I needed his assholedom. And one of the things he did was he was like, you need to call me every single day. I want to know what's going on for you. I want to know what you're choosing. I want to know what's up, what's happening. He said,
you would have hated that. That would have been a big thing for you.
He said, you need to learn accountability. And wow. I hated it, because I am one that if I want to crawl into my cave and shut the world out, and I couldn't do that. Yeah. And that was it, which was good. That was a very valuable part of where I was at the time. But so I did it every single day, and it taught me that it was like, hey, I need to be accountable for what's showing up in my life. I'm choosing it, and I think so that is, we talk about in Access, the tagline is empowering you to know that you know, but empowering you.
Yep.
And, so I had to look at it and go, wow, okay, if I'm the only one choosing this, I'm the only one that can change it.
Yeah. Wow. Such a huge, like, it's almost like even this conversation, like it's such a huge pool of energy and possibilities. Is there one tool, like if people were listening to this and they're like, okay, I'm gonna have a play with this choice thing, like, is there one thing that you could give to someone to start, or even if they've been doing it for many years, but sometimes, we kind of get lost in, and even me, and I have so many tools available, and sometimes I still feel myself going into this reality or other people's worlds or blah, blah, blah. Like, is there something that you use to kind of bring you back to that place of, like, the accountability, the creating your reality in your life in every moment, that choice energy to know, it's almost like that. It's not solid, but it's that solid kind of knowing, I guess.
Well, how do I put it? I think you have to be willing to. A lot of us have kind of been taught to take the soft way, and one of the things I had to learn I've learned a lot in the past few years, but I've had to learn to fucking call myself on bullshit.
Yeah.
So it's like because the only thing that's going to create a difference in your life is a different choice.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of tools we can go through, but more with that energy is like, if you're there's a lot of people with a lot of stuff going on in their lives right now, money being one of them, worry about the future, all of the different things going on in the world. Is stop, take a moment and go, okay, so what is this? What do I do with it? Can I change it? And if so, how do I change it? Because the one thing we've got to recognize is judgment does nothing but create more judgment and destroy your life. So sitting in it is not going to be helpful for you. And this is what I had to get really present with and go, what am I choosing this for? What am I desiring to create with this? But not that question either from what am I desiring to create from this? See, I'm hopeless, I'm still wrong, I'm useless. No, from an empowered position in your world of what am I desiring to create with this, knowing that you're creating with it, and going, okay, what's a different choice? A different choice might be, all right, how about if you've been trying to change something for 2 days or 2 weeks or 2 years and it's not changing? How about you take a break and have some kindness for yourself and go, all right, I've been looking at it in this direction. It's not changing. What's a different way that I've got to be with this? Or what's a different tool I could use? What's a different way I can look at it? Yeah. And Dane said something I was listening to, I don't know, a class or a call he was doing a few weeks ago. And one of the things he said, I was like, that's that energy. Brilliant. He said he had a mentor when he was in chiropractic school. And this guy said to him, he said, look, if you're working on somebody's back and it doesn't change and nothing's changing it, work on their front. If you're working on somebody's left shoulder and it's not changing anything, work on their right shoulder. Yep. And I was like, it's so true though, because if you look at it and you go, okay, I'm stressing out about money. I've got all this shit going on right now. It's not seeming to change. Here's a question. Okay, what if it's not what I've decided it is? What is it that I'm not? What is it? And here's a great tool. Here's one of my favorite processes that I use with everything, because logic will only create more logic. It won't create clarity, what true clarity is. And So if I'm looking at something, it's not changing, is what's it going to take for me to have clarity and ease with this? And then if you know the clearing statement and use that, but that's just asking for it. And what I find is if I ask for clarity and ease with something, I do it when before I go to sleep, because I know I've got, like 6 to 8 hours of no thinking. That thinking shit, it's just, thinking's just stinking. It's so annoying. But so I asked for it, and then 99% of the time, I wake up in the morning and I'm like, that's the thing I need to look at. That's how I need to look at this different. This is who I need to talk to. This is, and it comes.
Yeah. And there's such a freedom. It's almost like letting go. Like we've also been taught so much to, like, the more we hold on to something and control it, and this is sort of weaved through this podcast a lot as well, the more we hold on to, we control, we think about it, it's going to change. But it's actually the complete opposite to that. Like if you're willing to actually just, and that's what question is for me, is the place where I can let things go. It's almost like if I just ask a question around this, it lets go of all of the parts and pieces that I'm trying to hold and keep in place. And I think question is that tool that is going to change anything. It's going to get you to more choice. It's going to get you to that place of whatever that is for you. And there's another saying in Access, which is, what if you woke up and everything that you had been told was true, you found out was a lie? It's like everywhere that we've been told we need to hold on to things, we need to figure it out. But there's this freedom and this space in just being able to let things go and be. And
and to be able to question yourself. Go, is this really true for me? Is this really worth the fight? Is this really worth what I'm creating it as? Or is there a different possibility? And one of the things that's an ongoing journey for me is asking a true question.
Yeah.
Because it's easy to go, how does it get any better than this? It's not going to, but let me ask anyway. It's easy to ask the question that you have already concluded the result, but it's a different thing to really be in question. And that's where because there's an interesting thing in the world that I notice energetically right now also, where it's like, I don't know if I'd call it like this sense of almost like giving up, kind of like, you would hear about, I've been using these tools for 15 years. And like I said, it has been a journey, and I wouldn't change any of it. It's every part of it has taught me something different. And so it's not, if you give up, one of the things, I was having a conversation with Gary Douglas, and I know we're getting a bit long here, but just let me say this. I was having a conversation with Gary Douglas a few years ago, and he said, I was talking about, recovery with my addiction and stuff. And he said, look, what if it was about the rest of your life being about healing? And when he said it, I was like, I'm having that. And so if you look at it like that, what if it's not about the destination? Like, what if you truly allowed it to be about the journey?
Yeah.
You don't have to get it right anymore. You don't have to be perfect anymore. You just get to be you. And that could be completely different tomorrow.
Yep. Yeah. I so love that. And I so get that, what you mean about that energy in the world. It's like, that thing came out during COVID where they had that, I don't even know what they called themselves. And I guess it's still happening somewhere. I'm so oblivious to like current affairs and the news and stuff like that. But it was this thing of like, I think it was like the New World Order or whatever they called themselves. And I totally get there's still that underlying energy where they're like, it's the digital life. You'll have nothing and you'll be happy. Where people have this thing of like, if I can just make someone else responsible, it's almost like it's too tough to have these things that you and I are talking about right now. If I can just make someone else responsible for my choices and just kind of have this like postage stamp life, then everything will be okay. Like this. Yeah.
Well, and if that's enough for you, go for it. But for me, it's not.
No. And
and I've tried. I really have.
At the beginning of the podcast, it was funny because, you were talking about like the moment you stop, you didn't say this, but you start to destroy things. It's like, they say about sharks. A shark never stops.
Never
because
stops.
if they do, they die. So it's like, how much are we truly actually that deep down? And we've just bought that this reality tells us that we can't have the life that we dream of. And yeah, I truly wonder what is possible with people like you in the world being willing to, because it's not only like, I know you're choosing your life for you and that's what you're creating, but it just so happens that along that journey, you're actually like putting action into being that invitation for other people. Like, it sounds like so selfish to be like, oh, what, you just travel the world now and go to all of these places? But the whole point of your life is to empower people around you to know that that whatever that is for them, that they get to choose that too, if that's what they want to choose. So
yeah, and my question with that also is because man, I really, and I still to a degree kind of, I would love to be able to say I don't care what people's judgments are of me. Like, I don't care what people think of me. I'm much more to having a lot more space in my world with that. But what my question with it is, like, what do you avoid? And like, for anyone listening, what do you avoid choosing and creating based on what you've decided others are going to judge you for, that keeps you defending against it? So you would go see, because if you, and again, there's so many things with that also, but it's like, but just have that as a question, because if you look at that, if you're going to make judgment more real than choice, you're always going to give up what's true for you.
Yep. Amazing.
So let me shut up now.
No, it's great. And I mean, and even a podcast like this, it's like, if this, because even my head's a bit like, I'm like, whoa, that's, and it's also being willing to acknowledge the energy behind all of this too. Like, we've obviously sat here for nearly 50 minutes, talky, but behind all of the words, there's so much changing in the energy through something, like through whatever we're talking about, whatever we're creating. There's so many more levels and layers than just the words. So if you've gotten to this point in the podcast, congratulations. And maybe listen to it again and write a couple of things down, or play something like this. Like, when you find something that kind of tilts your world a bit like that. The other thing I love to do is just play things very softly through my house. Sometimes I'll just have things just on a very low volume playing in my home, because of that, excuse me, what's actually shifting and changing with the energy of things as well. So the last bit I would like to leave people with, and I want to ask you one more question after this, but the last thing I want to leave you with is, the most change you'll get is not the cognitive parts of this conversation. It's not understanding this conversation. It's not thinking about the things we said. It's probably taking like 2 questions, 1 tool, 3 things from this, and just applying them throughout your day and playing with them. That's going to create way more change than actually trying to sort of cognitively understand all of this stuff as well. Like that thing we've talked about as well with being able to let things go a little bit and be a lot more space than trying to grab hold of them and let your mind and your brain figure them out.
Yeah, and I mean, I would just like you to know, for anyone out there right now, is you got this. You put one foot in front of the other, and you keep going, and you got this. Okay, and just know that about yourself. Just know that whatever shows up, you got it, and what else is possible you've never considered.
Yeah. So before we wrap up, where are you off to next?
Know what we did? Someone told me that I'm going to Australia soon.
Oh my God, for the first time in forever.
5.5 years. So
Good.
for you Aussies out there, come on, let's do this thing. Let's get Australia rocking and rolling.
Yeah.
But next I am I'm in Brazil for another couple of weeks, and then I'm off
Nice.
to back off to the America.
Nice. And then to good old down under Australia.
Down under. Come on, mate. Let's do it.
There'll be lots
I'm
of
actually
surfing.
looking forward to
You
it.
can spend a lot of time in the water here.
There'll be lots of surfing, and just kind of there was some interesting things that I think I need to handle with just with me with the leaving of Australia. So I look forward to it.
That's very cool, and it's very brave of you to face whatever that is in your world that's going on too, because it's probably a lot, and I think it's awesome that that you're making that choice. It's very cool. So thank you everyone for listening, and leaving on that note, what brave choice could you make today that you maybe thought that you weren't brave enough to choose, or you've been unwilling to choose, and if you chose it, it would actually start to institute some of this stuff we've talked about and create the life that you've always desired to have. So thank you so much, Brendon. Thank you for being my guest.
Thank you for being my sister.
You're so welcome. Thank you for being my brother. And thank you for listening, guys. Thank you for making it this far if you did. And I know, Brendon, I speak on both of our behalves. If there's ever anything that either of us can contribute to you, please reach out to us. We will post where to find Brendon in the world. You guys know where to find me because it's probably wherever you've seen this podcast. But it's also like, hey, what if we had each other's backs? And if there was something that we could contribute to you, ask us. Thank you so much, Brendon. Thank you, everyone. See you next time.